It's Tuesday on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Hope you guys are having a great day out there. Happy to be back for another day. Who are we kidding, though? It's freezing cold outside. Might be negative right now. Vikings lost Monday night in butt-kicking fashion, 27-9 to the Rams. That will comprise the bulk of this show in just a little while. It was just me last night recording after the game. Play that back for you here in just a little bit. Had a lot of thoughts, tons of great questions from listeners, tons of emotion. Season over. We'll get to all that here in just a couple of minutes. First, though, what I missed, there were other games on Monday night. Kind of warm-up acts. You had the Gophers. I think they started at 5:30 against Maryland. Kind of an annoying start time, but kind of nice because I haven't watched, I'll admit, I have not watched a lot of Gopher men's basketball this season, and gave me a chance to kind of get a window into it. And they actually played reasonably well. I watched most of the first half. They were up on Maryland, and they were turning the ball over too much, but they were making their shots. Dawson Garcia looked pretty good. Couldn't sustain it, though. They lose 77-71. They had the big, closed door venting session after they got their doors blown off in the second half against Wisconsin a few days ago. I don't know if a 6-point road loss at a okay Maryland team is the result or the answer you're looking for from that, but it's better. It's more competitive. It's at least a step, I guess, in a better direction. I'm not saying the right direction, but they're 0-6 in the Big Ten. I think 8-9 overall now. Not a good team. Even the half I watched, even though they were playing better, wasn't terribly interesting, and that's not a good sign. Found my attention wandering, flipped over to the Wolves game before the Vikings game started. Watched a good deal of that. It was one of those games, they're playing a terrible Washington Wizards team. I wonder if they could have taken the same plane as the Gophers. That would have been kind of nice. They're all going to the same general area, kind of catch a ride. They're up 4 at halftime. I think Jordan Poole made like a 30-footer at the buzzer. So it's like 51-47. Kind of one of those games where even though the Wolves are not great so far this season, they know they're at least a good veteran team. They know they should beat the Wizards, and they probably know it doesn't take maximum effort, their best game, to do so. So they're kind of hanging around, flirting, not with danger, but he's like, hey, if we can win this game with 80% effort, that'd be kind of nice. Let's not expend more energy than we have to. But I think it's just a 3-point game at the end of the third quarter. Wolves pour it on from that point, though. They end up winning by 14, I believe was the final score, 120-106 on the strength of a 38-27 fourth quarter. Ant goes for 41. He's a plus 18. 3 steals, 7 assists, 6 rebounds. It's a good game for Ant. Not just threes either. He was 5 for 11 from 3, but that means he was 9 of 14 from 2, and that's a good sign because he's not been good from 2-point range this season, even though he's been better from 3-point range. Julius Randle, 20 and 10. I think they'll take that anytime. The bench guys were good, especially Na was a plus 20. DiVincenzo wasn't shooting well, but he was still pretty good. 13 points, no assists. Interesting there, but a good enough game, right? Like, it's the kind of game where you had to have it. You can't lose those games. They had their winning streak snapped the other night against Memphis. People were all upset. End of game. I think they were up 4, and then Memphis rallied. Not a lot of great late game offense in that game, but there's ebbs and flows in the NBA. I think we get so worked up over every little thing. They've played like the most clutch, most close games in the league, so it's been hard to kind of just relax about this team. Everybody's tense and upset because they want this team to be better. They want it right away. I don't know if they've got another gear or not. We're almost halfway into the season. I don't know if we've seen evidence of another gear. I want to know if another move is in the offing. I think Randall's been better lately, but still, like, you don't look at this roster and think, oh man, if things just start clicking, they could make a deep playoff run. Like, I don't feel that right now. I think we've got enough evidence to not feel that way. So I don't quite know what they're doing, but at least they're competitive when they should be and winning the games they need to win right now. I think that's better. They're better than they were 10 games into the season now that it's almost 40 games into the season. I guess that's a good thing. But overall, it does not feel like the kind of season where you're going to say, man, what an encore from the year before. But they did take care of the Wizards. They've won 4 of their last 5, and now they've got Golden State at home. That's a big one. That's one they should win, I think, because it's at home, because Golden State is sputtering. But if you want to be, a top 8, which isn't automatic anymore, but at least a top 8 gets you 2 cracks at the play-in, gets you a chance to be in the top 6 and avoid that altogether. Those are the kinds of games you got to win tonight and the next one against Golden State. They took care of this one. We'll see if they can take care of the next one. All right, let's do this. Rams 27, Vikings 9, season over. Those are the basics of what happened Monday night in Arizona, of all places. The nitty-gritty of it we'll get to here in just a moment, but that was a debacle, almost start to finish, right? Like, it was bad at the beginning, and it only got worse. Rams go right down, score a touchdown. Vikings go 3 and out, basically have to punt. Sam Darnold is under duress almost immediately at the start of the game. And it only gets worse from there, really. Like, it's 10-3 at one point. And you're like, okay, defense starting to settle down, but the offense never found a flow. Darnold takes a sack, the strip sack, fumble recovery for a touchdown. Kevin O'Connell gets a little aggressive in spots, but conservative in others, goes for it. 17-3, about 2 minutes left. They don't get it at midfield. Rams take over. Don't just go down and score a field goal. They get a touchdown. And then it's 24-3 at halftime. 27-9 is your final. 2 straight weeks that the Vikings, who are said to be coached by an offensive genius, and a team that had a good offense this season, second straight week, they both lay an egg and score just 9 points in the game. 9 points last week against the Lions. Remember 8 days ago when home field advantage throughout the playoffs was at stake, where they were 60 minutes away from not even having to play in this round, and then to lose 31-9 and 27-9 in the 2 biggest games of the season. A disheartening way to end a surprisingly great and fun season, right? Like, I thought they were going to win 7 games this year. They won 14 games. So let's not get too far ahead of what a disaster. This game was a debacle. This season was a miracle. I don't think I saw this coming in a million years. I don't think most people did. But you can't get that far and then play this way without there being a lot of questions that need answering and a lot of soul searching, frankly, in the offseason. Like, these questions would have been there regardless of how the regular season played out, regardless of how this game played out, but they're only more magnified now. I'm going to get to a whole bunch of your questions and comments here in just a few minutes, because you guys had some great perspective, some great venting after this game, well-earned venting, because I think we can recognize that even after a 14-win season, there can be disappointment, and there was disappointment Monday night. I think people could have accepted a hard-fought, close loss, would have been disappointing, maybe even a little more heartbreaking to a certain degree. Say you lose 27-24 in a last-second field goal. It hurts more probably than this. This was just a butt kicking from start to finish. This makes you wonder how they even got here versus feeling bad about not moving on. There was no delusion about who was the better team on the field, at least for those 60 minutes. By the way, remember, Vikings came into this game 2.5-point favorites. That's what people thought of this game, 2.5-point favorites, and then lose by 18. So a lot of soul searching to be had. Obviously, the big one, and you guys had a lot of questions about this, and I'll obviously get to this in a little bit too, the quarterback, Sam Darnold, another shaky game. I didn't put this one on him as much as I did the Detroit game. I thought the Detroit game, he was considerably worse than he was in this game, but he was bad in this game. He was indecisive. The final numbers don't look terrible, right? 25 for 40, 245, a touchdown, an interception. So it's like, yeah, by the end it looks okay, but he's sacked 9 times for 82 yards. 82 yards of sacks. Some of those sacks he absolutely should not have taken. You could see KOC getting exasperated with some of the sacks. You could see even, I guess it was the end of the first quarter, early second quarter interview they do with him on the sidelines where it's like, he's like basically lamenting the field position they gave up, stuff like that. They, getting behind the chains all night. Some of that's on Sam Darnold not getting rid of the ball. Some of that, though, is just on the offensive line. They were leaky tonight. They'd been better for a lot of this season. I think losing Christian Darrisaw maybe catches up to him tonight. Brian O'Neill goes out late with what looked like a pretty dirty hit on a concussion protocol type situation there. Interior of the offensive line, though, is the real problem. Blake Brandel, the rotating cast of characters at guard, Ed Ingram to start the year, Dalton Reisner for like the last half of the season, and then Garrett Bradbury at center. Those guys are just not physical enough. They can get pushed around, and against a good front, Detroit has a good front, and they press them with, a lot of, 7-man blitzes, and then the Rams just have a ton of talent up front, a really good defensive line. They got after Darnold. So I put some of this on the line, but some of this on Darnold too. So where do you go from there at quarterback? I think you're pretty clear. I think if you wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, if you wanted to say the Lions game was a fluke, biggest game of his career, hadn't really been in that situation before, this is 2 in a row. And these are the big games. These are the moments you got to have. You're not going to pay Sam Darnold $35-40 million next season when you've seen this. You're going to let him go. You're going to say thank you for most of a great season. And I think I'll end the show in 10-15 minutes by getting to one particularly astute Twitter follower who kept reminding me of his prediction from the start of the year. He had a great year. Like, Sam Darnold played way above his head for 16 games this season, most of the first 16 games of the season. Absolutely stunk against the Lions and was pretty bad in this game. Those are big moments. I think they probably have seen enough. JJ McCarthy is a complete unknown. Hashtag Bob Dylan, but he's, and hashtag Timothy Chalamet also. But he is the guy that they drafted. He's the guy they're staking their future to. He's the guy who they have predicated their cap around. I don't think there's any question now what happens at quarterback next year. It's J.J. McCarthy and another low-cost veteran pairing with him. Maybe Daniel Jones, who was sitting there on the sidelines tonight after they signed him to the practice squad and then elevated him earlier this season. So I think the question of quarterback is settled. At least Sam Darnold gave them the dignity of making that an easier decision than he could have if he had played exceptionally well, but they still lose this game. I don't think there's any question where you go from here with that. The bigger question is, like I say, A lot of free agents on this team. I mean, we forget that, but they hit on a lot of free agents. Some of those guys are back next year, but they already got to fix the interior of the offensive line. They got to totally remake their secondary. Everybody but Metellus is a free agent or on an expiring contract next year. That's a big if right there. Byron Murphy Jr., Stephon Gilmore, Shaq Griffin, all three of their top corners who stayed relatively healthy this season. All of them are free agents next season. That's a big question coming off of what we saw today. Cam Bynum, Harrison Smith, like a lot of questions in the secondary after this game. Not a lot of in-house options, right? They've not drafted well. They've masked that with the great free agent class. Like Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's best thing that he's done since he's been here was this year's free agent class. Blake Cashman, Jonathan Grenard, and Andrew Van Ginkel, a lot of the guys in the secondary I just mentioned, Sam Darnold, Aaron Jones, like they hit on just about everybody. Jones is on a one-year deal. Sam Darnold's on a one-year deal. Like a lot of the guys who were big-time performers for them this season, they're free agents. Some of them could be back next season. They probably like it here. They perform well here, but that's a big question mark for next year. Can they sustain close to this level of play with a lot of new cast of characters? Can they afford upgrades on the offensive line where they sorely, desperately need them? Can J.J. McCarthy become that guy? So a lot of questions going into next season. Who's going to be the defensive coordinator? Is Brian Flores still going to be here? What's Kevin O'Connell's future? I think he's going to be here, but, the Jay Glazer report from a week ago, a lot of teams are desperate for a head coach. Ben Gessling's been on. I don't think this is a problem. I think this gets settled. They throw a lot of money in him. He wants to be here, but he obviously wasn't thrilled with not getting an extension in the midst of the kind of year they were having with the kind of talent they had brought in. So a lot of questions there. The immediate aftermath of this game, though, is just disappointment. It was a great year, but it's disappointment. I want to get to a lot of what you guys had to say now. In just one moment, I'm going to pull up all of what I had from you guys. This is a bunch of good stuff. I'm just going to go in order. I had them kind of sorted into three piles of Darnold questions, preparedness / KOC questions, general events. There are some other things like that, but I'm going to go Blue Sky first, then we're going to go to Twitter. I'm just going to run through them all because there's a lot of good ones. I'm going to try to get to as many as I can here. It's infinite space. Might as well just keep going, right?
Watch your dreams and savings grow with Royal Credit Union's 4.25% annual percentage yield 12-month certificate. Open now at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/certificate saver. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 2/1/25. Insured by NCUA.
This was good. The Furry Puri dedicated listener says, nothing personal. I might skip daily delivery tomorrow, maybe even Wednesday. Some people just don't want to hear about the bad stuff, and I get that. Bless you if you're here right now listening to this, getting a little catharsis, a little bit of venting, stuff like that. Some of you are here for that. So Greg wants to know, why do bad things happen to good people? I don't know, right? I like to think most Vikings fans I know are good people. Had a really good friend of mine, Keith Rashad, who is on the Daily Delivery podcast weekly during the season, lives in Arizona, in the Tucson area, a couple hours from Phoenix, super excited that, the unfortunate circumstances led this game to be in Phoenix, 2 hours away from him. Brings his son, friend of ours, Rob. All of us went to the game in London earlier this season. They traveled to the game. They're excited for it. They're good people. They're some of my best friends. Why do good things happen? Why do bad things happen to them? I don't know. A lot of you guys put in a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money, and then you had to watch this happen, and I apologize for that. I didn't do it, but I apologize for that. Nate wants to know, does Darnold have a hand injury? It would explain some of his bad throws. Like, they kept showing a replay of him banging his hand on a helmet. He's done that before this season. I think that happens more than we really know, and I don't think it was so much physical with Sam Darnold in this week's game and last week's game as it was mental. He got happy feet. He started seeing the ghosts again. He felt the pressure last week. Certainly felt it this week. The difference was it wasn't always 5, 6, 7 guys coming at him. It was they're covered and they're getting pressure, and it's a helpless feeling. He's running for his life. So I think it was more mental than physical, but there certainly could have been something to his hand being banged up. Tim wants to know, I want to ask KOC how the team can be so ill-prepared in key games 2 weeks in a row. I think it's a valid point. I don't think they had great game plans either one of these weeks. I don't think they had enough short passes. Like, they had some, but their short passes seemed to be safety valves versus real threats. Like, their screen game wasn't great tonight, and they don't make teams pay for rushing at them. Maybe the lone exception was the one touchdown in these two games. The one touchdown in these two games where I think the Rams brought pressure, finds Hawkinson for a touchdown. Brian says, getting back to the Sam thing, his pinky was taped. Either way, the last two games were tough for Sam. Yeah, I mean, he might have been banged up a little bit, but I don't think the physical was as much a problem as the mental was for Sam Darnold these last two games. But thanks, Brian, for jumping in on that. I don't think the game plan was great. I don't think they were very well prepared for what Detroit did to them on defense last week. The storyline this week was last time they played the Rams, they didn't know Puka was going to be activated. That was a surprise. Hey, guess what? Puka was still pretty good tonight. Stafford was still pretty good tonight. It wasn't just the element of surprise that got to them. Stafford had a passer rating of 117.7. Puka goes for 5 for 44. They spread the ball around to a lot of different guys. Higbee had a bunch of catches, the tight end. They ran the ball well enough. Mostly it was the defense, but they did enough on offense to keep the Vikings off balance. But mostly it was them not being prepared to move the ball in a key situation for the second week in a row. 9 points. Both those games not going to get it done. G.H. Moore wants to know, lots of people, commentators included, commented on the lack of urgency shown by the offense later in the game, even just getting to the line. To me, it felt like they moved slowly from the second quarter on even. What do you think caused this? Coaching issues, players not believing after the Lions loss? I felt that way too. It wasn't so much the first half because, it's 10-3. You're trying not to panic. Even when it's 17-3, it was not the worst thing in the world. When it got to 24-3, though, it got bad. I felt it third quarter, certainly like the last 2 minutes of the third quarter where they get the ball back, they're deep in their own territory, and it's like, you guys, are you trying to score or just like it almost felt like they were running a 4-minute offense where they're trying to keep the ball away from the Rams, where they're trying to not give the ball back or make the score more palatable, make it look less lopsided. It almost felt like a PJ Fleck game against an overmatched opponent, or whether they're overmatched against an opponent. I specifically think back to the game in North Carolina last year against Drake May. I happened to be there for that game. They were trying to keep it close. Felt like they weren't trying to win. They were trying to keep it close in the end, trying not to get embarrassed. I don't know what the deal was. At a certain point, they just couldn't do anything. And I think that caught up to them. I think they were rattled a little bit last week. I think that's true. And I think that there was some of that this week. But, even at 27-9, they were still like, there's still like that chance, right? Like if you hurry up, if you get in the flow, you hustle, like you make it 27-16, 27-17, like that, you're still in it. So I feel like the urgency was lacking. I'm with you on that. It bothered me too. I don't know what it was exactly, but they didn't look like they carried any kind of confidence into this game. They looked like their confidence really got drained last week by the Lions. Chris says, question, my partner texted me to pick up Oreos with peanut butter, so I bought peanut butter filled Oreos, and it turns out she wanted Oreos and also a jar of peanut butter. I forgot my question. Moment of levity in the middle of all this. I did reply to him saying, anytime you're at the grocery store, anytime you've been given a request, just send a text. Over communicate. I'm an over communicator. I will text. I'll say, here's what I think you said, but I just want to be sure. Usually I've got it right, but like there's the 75-25 where you're going to misconstrue. You don't want to be wrong. So always over communicate. Maybe a good lesson. Speaking of over communicating, the play where Darnold got strip sacked, I was screaming at the TV, call timeout. They didn't look like they were ready to run that play. There's confusion. The clock is winding down. I'm like, just call a timeout. Get a play you want. Call a timeout. Next thing you know, it's a strip sack, touchdown, 17-3. That's where the game got out of hand. That play right there is where we went from a back-and-forth game where the Vikings got off to a slow start to, the route could be on because at 17-3, you got a defensive touchdown. Away they go. Matt wants to know, I want to know why anyone was expecting anything different. For Vikings history, that's fair. For this year's Vikings, I think it was fair to expect them to be better. I think it was fair to expect you were going to see a better effort. And that was what was disappointing because you started to believe that this year's team was different. And in this game, at least, last week's game, at least, they were not different than what we've seen from Vikings teams of the past. Leaf wants to know, besides the obvious, Sam and the offensive line, how much of the blame do you put on KOC? I think Campbell and McVay one-upped the last 2 weeks. I don't disagree with that. I think KOC's got to take some of the blame. I think the game plan didn't incorporate enough dangerous short stuff. And that's maybe it feels like an oxymoron, but there's the danger of quick passing, the danger of getting guys open in space, not just with bubble screens, like slants, getting guys hot reads where guys just run into space. I didn't feel like there was enough of that last week. There certainly wasn't enough of that this week. I think I agreed with the field goal to make it 10-3. It was the math might tell you go for it. I think they kind of wanted to have points there. Seemed like he had his mind made up, though. You heard the first quarter, end of first quarter interview with him where he was like, if we don't get it, we're going to take the points. That was before the play. It was 3rd and 10, becomes 4th and 2. Do you rethink? Had he made up his mind already that they were going to take points if they didn't get it? That bothered me a little bit. Maybe he was stubborn, stuck in a mindset instead of say, hey, okay, 4th and 2, we got to recalibrate. Maybe we go for it. Maybe we try to punch this in and make it 10-7. It was risky to go for it at midfield, down 17-3. I don't necessarily disagree with it. I think the thought was if you punt it, there's a good chance the Rams go down and get a field goal anyway. It was a point in the game where you needed to do something. I'm not so much second-guessing the strategy. They just didn't get it done. So I don't think it was a terrible strategy game for KOC, but I think he's 0-2 in the playoffs right now. He's had 2 great regular seasons where they've been tremendous in one-score games, and they've had 2 playoff underachievements, and that is what he carries into this offseason. UMN 26 on the same topic. It seems KOC can't adjust. They coach the team to do certain things well, but can't make changes when defenses take it away. Will he take a real look at how he designs the offense and calls plays to get better? I think he will. I think he's that kind of coach, but I think he did get out-coached these last couple of weeks. Minnesota Sports Fan 33. How does Darnold attempt 40 passes while only targeting JJ 8 times? That's malfeasance on the part of KOC and Sam. That's also the Rams defense taking it away. When they do that, Addison's got to have a big game. Hawkinson's got to have a big game. Naylor's got to have a big game. They probably could have done that if Darnold got protected better, if Darnold gets rid of the ball more. It's just a confluence of all sorts of things. But I would have liked to seen Jefferson get the ball more. His final numbers were okay, but he's still searching for kind of that signature game. He's not had that signature playoff game. He winds up with 5 for 58. That's not the game he wanted to have for sure. Brendan says, people are saying his right hand had to be amputated, and unfortunately the donor hand he got was a lefty. That's Sam Darnold. That's funny. Aaron says, did they just run out of gas, or is this an emotional letdown after the Packers celebration, similar to the Minneapolis Miracle, leading to 38-7? Yeah, I mean, I get that. They were riding a pretty big high. They were, carrying Darnold around the locker room at certain points. And then the crash against the Lions. I don't know. I don't know how to explain this other than to say the team we saw the last 2 weeks did not play with the same crispness or confidence as the team we saw most of the rest of the regular season. Even when they lost to the Lions and the Rams in the regular season, they played much, much better. So that's disappointing. That's a big disappointment because that's not who they were for most of this season. Aaron says, that looked like a dirty play on the O'Neal concussion. I agree. And Lord Grizzly says, any indecisive quarterback will make any coach look bad. Don't disagree. I think both of them could have done the other some favors had they been better, had they played better, had they coached better. But you're right. Sam Darnold was indecisive in this game, and that hurt them right there. Pig's Eye Guy says, silver linings, clarity, no QB controversy this offseason. Absolutely agree. They can focus on preparing J.J. McCarthy to begin his career. Lots of cap space to sign younger quality players on defense and O-line. It falls on Quesedo Fomensa and Kevin O'Connell to get the right players. Absolutely. That's a good way to finish the blue sky portion of our program. You guys loaded me up. I'm going to go to Twitter right now, X if you prefer, and get to the rest of these right now before we get out of here. Jake, who had responded to an earlier query when we'd done a pregame video about how it was his birthday, he was prepared to be hurt. He said, after it was like middle of the game, he said, man, but not like this. That's the thing. Like, I think people were nervous about this game because it's the playoffs. Like, you lose, it's done. Like, it's a fun season. You lose this game, the whole thing is done. I don't think people expected the Vikings to get their butts kicked. Maybe a few people who have the most scars expected that, but I think people did not see this coming because it's a 14-3 team playing a 10-7 team. Although, let's be honest, it's kind of a 9-2 team, right? Because they started 1-4, then they got all their good receivers back. They went 9-2, then they rested everybody the last week. They didn't care if they were the 3 or the 4. Maybe they thought, hey, for the 4, good chance we're going to play the Vikings. Good chance we like what we see with the Vikings. Maybe that was their mindset, but that's what I see in the Rams. But yeah, I don't think most people saw this level of butt kicking coming. Nick says, I know every situation and every year is different, but it is mind-numbingly frustrating to never ever feel like the Vikings can get up for a big game. Besides Darnold's collapsing in on himself, why were we not prepared this week or last week? It's a great question. I don't think it's not all preparedness. Like, some of it is game flow. You get into it. Like last week, Darnold misses a ton of throws. Like, that game could be completely different if he makes some throws in the first half. This week felt like they were just cooked from start to finish, and I don't know why. I think they lost some of their mojo last week. I think that Lions game really deflated them, made them maybe doubt themselves a little bit. But it's not a great playoff record recently. There's been a lot of playoff disappointment for this team. Not a lot of great things when they get into the wild card situation, things like that. So I'm with you. I'm sorry that it had to turn out this way. Giles says, positive, hello, JJ era. Yes, we've been through that. Negative, the interior offensive line needs major upgrades. Yeah, it does. But at least you saw it. At least you weren't fooling yourselves. At least you don't go into next season saying, hey, this is fine. Drinking my coffee, everything's burning. No, it's not fine. They got to fix that. And this game told you all you need to know about the interior of the offensive line. Tyler says, how do you come out last week and embarrass yourselves on national TV, take a week to prepare for an inferior team, and do it again? All caps. Tyler, I don't know. I know that it is hard to fathom, but they did it. That's what they did tonight, and their season's over. Ryan says, no vent, just exhaustion with a topping of disappointment. My Scott Studwell bottle of wine that I won't crack until, parentheses, ever, question mark, a Super Bowl appearance returns to the cellar. Man, I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's a Scott Studwell bottle of wine. That's impressive. I don't know how old that is, but it's got to be pretty aged. I'm going to get back to Bob in a minute. Don't let me forget. Ryan says sacks, huge issue. The line was weak. Sam held the ball too long, a lot. The total of sacks is embarrassing. 9. I believe that was a Vikings playoff record. I saw Ben Gessling tweet that. Previous record was 8 in the 1987 NFC title game, which the Vikings almost won. Wade Wilson sacked 8 times in that game. The total of, is it the line, the quarterback, the play calling, or give it to the Rams defense? I think it's all those things. The Rams were tough. I don't think they had enough built in to get the ball out quick. Darnold was indecisive. The line didn't play well. It's all those things. It's not just one thing. It's not usually just one thing. Snark Chariot, my good friend Aaron, why do I even bleeping bother is the only question worth asking. I got up at 2 a.m. in Sweden to watch that bleep FML. Sorry, Aaron. I know. It hurts. It hurts no matter what time you watched it, but especially if you got up at 2 a.m. to watch this game. Bob is going to close this out for us. Ripshot44. He tweeted at me on September 8th, 2024. This is going to be the Keenum year. Darnold going for 38 touchdowns. Prep for heartbreak in January playoffs, though. Sent me 5 reminders along the way when Darnold had good games, and then simply tweets at me at 10:18 p.m. on January 13th, 2025. Was this 4 months later, roughly? Pretty close. Darnold had 35 touchdowns, not 38. Other than that, this was his Case Keenum season. Maybe he'll do more in the future, but this could be his Case Keenum season. This was certainly a Case Keenum-like year of unexpected success. Playoff heartbreak in January, absolutely. Congratulations, Bob. You knew on September 8th exactly what was going to happen, but I know you watched it anyway. You watched it even though you knew what was coming. Can't stop what's coming. No country for old men. No time for playoff wins. Lots more Vikings content coming up on the Wednesday show as well. Cover your ears if you don't want to relive it all, but tune in if you want the postseason kind of lowdown, if you want to know what's coming next. Andrew Kramer will be on with me to break it all down. We'll see how much we get into. We'll see when we're able to record, too, because I know he's going to have a flight back and a busy day. But we'll get poetry. We'll get Andrew on at some point, and we'll go from there on Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am Michael Rand. Back at it again tomorrow.